cannot thank you. I felt like this is an Academy Award. You got Art and Tom up here. I can't thank you enough, Art and Tom and everybody, for the leadership you have been providing forever, and for the friendship. It is really, truly good to be home, and I cannot thank everyone here enough for the work that you tirelessly do every year, fighting for the voice, fighting for the dignity, fighting for the lives of working people in our state and, by extension, our country. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And you know, as we've talked about it many times, the work of leaders in organized labor in California is the work of national leadership. We have seen many times over the years, as we have stood together, how folks will try and come into California because if they think that they can get away with anything that would be about impeding or getting in the way of workers' rights here, then they think if they could do it here, they could do it anywhere. And so the leaders in this room are holding it down, not only for this state, but for the entire nation, and doing it every day tirelessly with dedication. It is personal, it is professional, and it is making a difference. And as I travel our country meeting with folks, I continue to hear stories about how the men and women in this room are providing leadership on a daily basis for people around our country. So I thank you, I thank you, I thank you, and I am proud to be your United States Senator. And then I'm doing this other thing also. And so, you know, I'll tell you, as it relates to this other thing, you know, people have been asking me why. Why am I doing it? And I tell people because, you know, I do believe that this is an inflection moment in the history of our country. I think of this as being a moment in time that is requiring us each and collectively to look in a mirror and ask a question. That question being, who are we? And I think what we all know is part of the answer to that question is we are better than this. We are better than this. So this is a moment that is requiring us to fight for the best of who we are, and who but labor knows how to fight, and fight effectively, and fight in an organized way, and fight on behalf of the people. People ask, well, why are you doing this? What's going on? And I tell them, well, I believe this is a moment in time that we have got to restore the importance of truth and justice in our country. I believe this is a moment in time where we must restore equal opportunity for all Americans to achieve success and well-being. And then I'll tell you personally, I mean, part of why I'm doing this is I was raised, my sister and I, we were raised by a mother who was all of 5 feet tall. But if you had ever met her, you would have thought she was 7 feet tall. And our mother was the kind of parent who, when you came home complaining about something, my mother would look at you and she'd ask, okay, so what are you going to do about it? So I decided to run for president of the United States. So let me I just want to talk a little bit about what I'm seeing around our country, and from the perspective of being where you sent me to Washington, D.C. about 2 years and some months ago. The importance of restoring truth and justice in our country couldn't be more real. You know, there are a lot of people, we all know this, in our country who are rightly feeling a great deal of distrust in their government and its institutions and leaders. And the thing about a relationship of trust, which we all know, is that by its very nature, a relationship of trust is reciprocal. You give and you receive trust. And one of the most important ingredients in trust is truth. But there's a funny thing about truth. Speaking truth can often make people quite uncomfortable. And for those of us who speak behind a microphone and behind a podium, there is an incentive that when we speak, we'll make everybody happy, that we'll make everyone feel lovely, that we'll sprinkle lovely dust all over the room and everybody will applaud and job will have been done. Well, speaking truth doesn't always accomplish that goal. But the other thing about speaking truth is this. Yes, people may walk away from that conversation thinking, you know, I didn't particularly like what I had to hear. But they will also walk away from that conversation knowing it was an honest conversation. So let's speak some truth in our country, and labor has been doing it and does it every day. Let's speak truth. America's economy is not working for working people. Let's speak that truth. And how do we know it to be true? Well, in America, right now, today, almost half of American families are a $400 unexpected expense away from complete upheaval. $400 unexpected expense. That could be the car breaking down. That could be a hospital bill you didn't see coming. $400 which will upheave that whole family. In America today, in 99% of the counties in our country, if you are a minimum wage worker, working full-time, you cannot afford market rate for a one-bedroom apartment. In America, just last year, 12 million Americans borrowed on average $400 from the payday lender at an interest rate of often over 300%. That is America today. America is not working for working people, which is why I am proposing, and this is a combination, this proposal, of a lot of folks' input, many of whom are in this room. What I am proposing is that for families who make less than $100,000 a year as a family, they will receive a $6,000 tax credit that they can receive at up to $500 a month. Economists are describing it as what would be the most significant middle-class tax cut we have seen in this country in generations. We have got to speak truth. Let's speak truth. We are a nation that pretends, and a society that pretends to care about education, but not so much the education of other people's children. Let's speak that truth. I have met, and we know, more teachers than we care to say who are currently working 2 and 3 jobs to pay the bills. 90% of teachers in public schools today are coming out of their own pocket to pay for school supplies. And the reality of it is, speaking truth, there are 2 groups of people who are raising our children. Parents, could be grandparents, aunties and uncles, and teachers. And we are not paying them their value, and we have got to get correct on that. On average, teachers in America are making 10% and over less than other college graduates of their stature. So what I am proposing is what will be the first time in our nation's history a federal investment in closing the teacher pay gap, which is currently approximately $13,500 a year. And let's be clear about what $13,500 a year means. Everybody in this room, we know what it means. What it means is, for most people in our country, a year's worth of paying the mortgage. $13,500 a year means a year's worth of groceries. $13,500 a year for a lot of those teachers means putting a significant dent in their student loan debt. And here's my feeling about this. When people want to come to me asking, first of all, how are you going to pay with that, for that tax credit for the families making less than $100,000 a year, I'll tell you, come up to me, how are you going to pay for it, right? You know how we're going to pay for it? On day one, we're going to repeal that tax bill that they passed, benefiting the top 1% and the biggest corporations in our country. That's how we're going to pay for it. Those folks didn't need that money. also wanted to say on the issue of these people talking about, how you're going to pay for it, right? It's funny how they bring up that conversation when you talk about figuring out how public policy can support working people. It's an interesting thing. Have you ever noticed how are you going to pay for it when you're talking about supporting working families and working people? But here's how I think about it. I think about it, people want to praise, and people do praise people in the private sector for running efficient businesses and growing their businesses. Well, you know what they do? They don't talk about cost. They talk about investment. And then they talk about measuring the effectiveness of how people are running stuff based on 3 letters. That's the analysis, 3 letters. And the letters are ROI. What's the return on their investment? You invest in families, you invest in working people in America, you'll get a great return on that investment. That's right. So let's speak truth. Let's speak truth that the unions of America built America's middle class. Let's speak that truth. And while we have people that are trying, I just heard today somebody said, in Twitter or wherever, people are starting to try and call unions special interest groups. That's a game they're playing. That's a game they're playing. And we're going to have to fight against that because that's real. And we're going to have to push back, and we might need to do some educating of people and continue to do some educating to remind people unions built the middle class in this country. People have a 5-day work week because of unions. People have sick leave because of unions. People have an 8-hour work day because of unions. People have health care because of unions. People have safe working conditions because of unions. So let's speak some truth. And so Art was like, where are you going? I was going over there because I was going to talk to my sisters and brothers who are the child care workforce. And I love you, and I thank you, and all that you are doing to organize a critical workforce and to organize and unionize and understand that, listen, I believe you can judge a society based on how it treats its children. You can judge a society based on how it treats its children. And one of the greatest expressions of a society's love for its children is to put resources and support into anybody who's caring for those children, teaching those children, and investing, therefore, in our collective future. So I could go on and on with the truth, but I'm not going to keep you. There's just one more, though, that I would like to mention. And it is in large part because I've been traveling a lot around our country, and I think that right now there are a lot of very powerful forces and voices that are trying to sow hate and division among us. And I think that when we see that and we know it's happening, we must speak a fundamental truth, and we must speak it from our hearts, we must speak it from our souls. And that truth in the face of those who are trying to divide us is this: the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. And we must speak that truth, and we must own that truth. And we must not allow people to get away with selling that stuff they're trying to sell in their effort to divide us, which is their effort to have us lose our strength. Let's not buy that. The vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. And here's how I think about it. I think about it based on what I call the middle of the night thought. Some people refer to it as the 3 in the morning thought. You know, others refer to that as the witching hour. You know what I'm talking about, right? You know, when you wake up in the middle of the night with that thing that's been weighing on you, sometimes you wake up in a cold sweat. Well, for the vast majority of us, when we wake up thinking that thought, it is never through the lens of the party with which we're registered to vote. For the vast majority of us, when we wake up thinking that thought, it is never through the lens of some discrete little simple demographic a pollster put us in. And for the vast majority of us, wherever we are, whoever we are, when we wake up thinking that thought, it usually has to do with one of just a very few things: our personal health, the health of our children or our parents. For so many Americans, can I get a job, keep a job, pay the bills by the end of the month, retire with dignity? For our students, can I pay off those student loans? For so many families, can I help get my family member off their opioid addiction? The vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. And so as we march on, as we march forward, I would ask us to hold on to that strength. And I would ask us to also remember that one of the greatest strengths of who we are as a nation is that by our nature and character, we are aspirational. We are a nation that was founded on noble ideals. Those ideals that were present when we wrote the Constitution of the United States and all of its amendments and the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence and those words we spoke in 1776, that we are all and should be treated as equals. We are aspirational by nature. We are also clear-eyed. We've not yet reached those ideals. But our strength is that we fight to get there. And so I say fight we will. And we will fight knowing what can be unburdened by what has been. We will fight knowing that one of the best ways to fight for who we are and who we can be as a nation is to organize, is to lift up voices, is to give working people a chance to be for them what they deserve in all that they deserve in terms of their dignity. And as we move toward the future that we all can see, and as we fight for that future, let's remember this is a fight that is born out of optimism. This is a fight that is born out of love of country and knowing what it can be. And the bottom line is this: years from now, people are going to ask us, they'll look in our eyes, each one of us, and they will ask us, where were you at that inflection moment? And what the House of Labor is going to be able to respond is more than just how we felt. What we will tell people is what we did. That we organized folks, that we mobilized folks, that we lifted them up, that we spoke up, that we marched when necessary, that we sought when necessary, and that we were a voice for who has built this country and who deserves to have the dignity. Because the power will always be with the people.